You've seen the originals, you've seen the sequel, now get ready for the spin-off literally no one was asking for. How many times must you press one of these things, or these things, from first gaining control of your character to finishing all 36 levels? That's using all the tricks in the book. Extras, free play, co-op, glitches, even those special overpowered custom characters you get when you 100% the game. I at first thought it would be a straightforward question to answer, perhaps not worth dedicating an entire video to. I mean, it's not like this minimum button challenge is all that popular outside of a few Mario games, so does anyone actually care? And it's just a simple Lego game. How much thought could it really take? Oh, you have to open some doors, so many doors, make sure you don't jump if you don't have to, kill the bosses using bounty hunter bombs or something. Simple. But this task turned out to be so challenging, a year ago I simply gave up. But something deep down kept drawing me back. After over 100 hours of researching, planning, testing, and execution, I think I've concocted a near optimal minimum buttons playthrough. But before starting my journey, I made a guess of 700 buttons required to beat the game. That's 100 per episode plus 100 for menu selections. But without any reference, that goal may be completely unobtainable. So I first set out for a baseline to compare to. I beat the game first in story mode, no extras, co-op, or any advanced tactics your average player wouldn't know about. This took 2,094 buttons in total. I'm showing Xbox buttons here just cause that's the system I used, but PlayStation is the same, just different symbols. Anyway, 2,053 of those button presses were during gameplay, jumping with the A button, drawing my weapon and attacking with the X button, swapping characters with Y, and doing basically everything else, building using the Force, activating panels with B. 41 were from menus, selecting continue story mostly. Then I played through with a bit more to help me out. Free play using the super-powered 100% custom characters, let's call them supers for short, as well as the extra deflect bolts, just so I don't have to deal with most enemies. This cut down my buttons pressed greatly to 1,251, with 1,104 from in-game and 147 in menus. But of course, with all the tricks and odd strategies I could come up with, or could appropriate from speedruns of the game, I know I could bring that down even more. First off, some basic rules. Play all 36 levels to completion in any order I want. Every time a button is pressed down counts, whether it be to jump or to toggle on an extra, and turbo controllers are not allowed for obvious reasons. No Xbox exclusive glitches are allowed, namely death warps, as they aren't really fun and they're unfair to PC players. We start with Chapter 1, Episode 1, which is not a trivial thing to say because completing the levels in order is not the optimal strategy. In fact, here's the order I will be playing them. I tried arranging them in order as much as I could without sacrificing optimization, if it's any consolation. First things first, to actually enter the level, you have to press some buttons. For every level, playing story mode requires 1 button press, while free play requires 3 since you have to pick a character. So free play is only advantageous when it saves more than 2 buttons. For level 1, that is the case. Our chosen character is a super. This one has a lightsaber, which is important. Right off the bat, a required button press is staring us in the face. Heading down the hallway normally would require using a panel, then building another, and finally forcing this wall out of the way. But after some research, I found an alternative. Around here, start holding down toggle, which will cycle through Droideka, as Droideka is always given in this level. Very convenient, I must say. And we can just clip on through to the other side of this wall. Still holding toggle, we make our way through the level, and finally, carefully avoiding the bottomless abyss around us, make our way to the final room. The reason holding toggle is required is due to an upwarp needed to get to the area behind the barrier. But what is an upwarp? This will come up multiple times in the run, and it's quite simple. When you toggle characters while under a normally accessible part of the floor, the game will warp you up onto the floor where you're supposed to be. Now we have just one more obstacle. This horrible wall. Double jumping over for 2 button presses is of course trivial, but I just had a feeling I could do better than that. I figured out this strange quirk where you can push the droids over the wall by wedging them here, like so. Do this with all the droids in the area. You can actually use the droids to push the buttons to lower the barrier for us. Unfortunately, they don't spread out enough on their own to press both buttons, so they need a little bit of coercing, which we can do by backflipping once. That's why the lightsaber custom super was needed. A blaster super cannot backflip. With some luck, they will deactivate the force field, and we can finish the level pressing only 4 buttons, plus the 3 to enter the level and 1 to exit. You may have noticed we didn't turn on any extras yet. That's because we only want to pull up the extra menu a single time. It does though make pushing all these droids a royal pain as you die over and over and over and over. But now we are free to turn on all the extras we need for the future. Exploding blaster bolts will prove very useful, and so will deflect bolts. Invincibility is not as important as you may think, but it is required for a couple levels. It makes every level so much more convenient. Super Ewok Catapult will be quite important, that's not a joke. And Infinite Torpedoes is needed for vehicle levels, though probably not for the reasons you think. Self-destruct will only be useful for a couple levels later on, so to turn all those on is 9 button presses. For this challenge, Chapter 2 plays a bit different than standard play. Force up the tree, then do a backflip triple jump over this tank. If you don't know, a triple jump is when you jump with a lightsaber character, start to slam, then hit toggle right after. This sends you flying into the air, and it'll be useful later on in the run to even clip through ceilings. After the triple jump, keep holding toggle. Swap to R2 to fly across here, and we now need Grievous's Bodyguard, a high jump character that can be given for this level. Yes, that means putting your run in the hands of the RNG gods to give you the correct high jumper, but it's the only way to get the optimal run, so it must be done. If we hold toggle for a bit and jump at the right moment, a nice high jump happens which lets us jump up here, but for this platform 2 jumps are needed. Then 3 more jumps takes us to the end of this area. The toughest part about this high jump method is the timing, but it definitely beats trying to make certain tricky jumps using just the custom super. Moving through to the end is simple stuff, bringing the button count to 15. Chapter 3 is also known as Escape from the Existential Dread of Deflected Blaster Bolt RNG. The first part is fairly simple. Just grapple up here and hope the droid doesn't kill itself as you walk past to get to the destructible block, so it can be destroyed for you. Same thing for the window further up ahead. Then we get to our first wall button. We need to line ourselves up so a droid will deflect a shot off of us and hit the button. And to make matters worse, because of the exploding blaster bolts, the droids are quite prone to killing themselves before you get the right RNG. Similar story up ahead, though it is a bit easier because of the number of droids. After this, the level is fairly easy. Just backflip up here, and you're good to go once a droid destroys the block for you. With the pod race level, we have quite a doozy on our hands. This was probably the trickiest level for this challenge. Select Story Mode to save a couple buttons, and then go forward for a while. We'll skip Chapter 5 for now and head to the Darth Maul fight. For Maul, we need an Ewok. It's best to not rely on the game giving us one if we don't have to, and luckily we don't. In the Battle of Endor, it's almost guaranteed Player 2 will be an Ewok, though there's a small chance for something else. We can then take Ewok into the Maul fight right after. So let's skip ahead to the Ewok village, making sure we do get an Ewok, heading across by using this shorty panel, and making a couple tricky backflip jumps. The next part is super easy, just make use of deflected exploding bolts. And really the only part that could cause some trouble comes when you reach the bunker. To get to the top of the bunker, a backflip just barely does the trick. Your co-op partner should magically appear, and use him as a backboard for your bounty hunter bomb to destroy both blocks. Then it's standard play for a bit, using enemy bolts to open both doors. Now comes one of my favorite tricks in the game. Standing here will cause our co-op Ewok to go on a magical adventure through the wall. Drop in your co-op partner right as the stormtrooper draws his gun to make him pull the lever for whatever reason. We can then drop out Player 2, which takes 2 buttons unfortunately. One last thing to note before building the bombs is if you head in here like normal, Player 2 will swap off the Ewok, which is definitely not what we want. The workaround is just pushing Player 2 towards the bombs, which keeps him nice and docile. So 36 buttons for Endor, which is the most of any level. Can you guess which is the second? Now it's time to murder some Maul. At the start, we need to use Grievous's Bodyguard again, like with Invasion of Naboo. Still toggling, jump up here using Bodyguard, grapple up here with the super, and jump one more time. Then the toggling is no longer needed. The next area just requires some jumps, so nothing too crazy. Heading to the final showdown, one time I was able to clip through the wall using Droidica, but it was really finicky, so 4 force uses is probably the way to go. Now we can use our Ewok buddy we worked so hard for. With Super Ewok Catapult enabled, for whatever reason your co-op Ewok can now damage enemies. So he'll do most of the work. Hold down toggle for a while to save a press in the next level, which means you'll need to carefully time a couple blaster shots to stun Maul when he starts throwing random trash all over the place. 18 buttons for the level. With 6 levels down, let's take inventory. 31 buttons from menu selections, 78 from gameplay. Now that we have our trusty Ewok friend, we might as well blast through some more boss fights. General Grievous is up next, and this is actually one of my favorite levels for this challenge. With Ewok by our side, I was at first shooting for under 13 buttons. Here's how 8 is possible. With toggle held from the end of Maul, we pick Grievous's Bodyguard. First, line up Ewok so he's facing towards Grievous. Kill yourself so that you spawn back as the given Jedi character, and you'll have just enough time before the toggle recommences to stun Ewok. This causes him to shoot in his confusion. Let Ewok do his thing again, then jump up top to Grievous with a couple high jumps. Make sure to shoot this wall for later. Grievous will jump back down like the coward he is, and you can actually make it back without jumping, but it's tricky. Ewok puts in work. Jump back up, and finally you can let go of toggle. Thankfully, by panning the camera up, you can force the explosive thing without needing to grapple. Then shoot it while holding toggle so you can have it for the next level, and Ewok finishes the job. Beautiful. Next in our sights is Count Dooku. With Grievous only taking 8 buttons, surely this will be even less. Select Yoda. Since toggle is still being held, we don't have to suffer through any of Yoda's slow walking. Around here, there are many ways to do this, but in the end, they all require one jump. We want to use an upwarp to get high into the air and clip through the wall. I really have no idea why this works, but it does. This clip lets us get under the floor so we can upwarp past Dooku and get into the final area. We'll again be holding toggle through to the next level. Then call Ewok Master Chief, cause he's finishing this fight. That means only 2 button presses are needed for the level. We need to end as Yoda for the next level, so there's about a 1 in 10 chance Ewok finishes the level at the right moment. We must now say goodbye to Little John, as his services are no longer required. For Ruin of the Jedi, pick Droideka alongside Yoda, which will mean 1 swap is needed in the cantina. With the toggle held from Dooku, swap over to Yoda so you can open the door. To make sure Yoda doesn't start slow walking on us, do not allow Yoda to slide on any surface nor fall down, so tread carefully up these stairs. And look at this, an unavoidable drop. Make your way slowly to this door, open her up, and oh boy. Only took 47 hours, but we're finally here. Jump with Yoda, then swap to Droideka at the right moment. And voila! Make sure you hold toggle to cycle back to Yoda once inside, finishing the level with just 10 buttons pressed. You'll notice we finished the level with Droideka and Yoda, or Yodika as some call them, and that's quite a special thing. There are in fact some levels that need good old Yodika, so let's head to Kashyyyk, the previous level if we were doing this chronologically. Swap to Yoda and head to the left. There's quite a tricky Yodika clip we can do here. It's fairly easy with a standard triple jump, but without a lightsaber slam, I managed to do it just 3 times in over 100 attempts. Keep holding toggle as you walk across the void. This lets you skip the most tragic cutscene in the game. Order 66 has arrived. But the clones must not know that because once you upwarp, they don't seem to want to do the whole genocide thing. Then there's another Yodika jump right here, which is a lot easier, and it lets you skip saving all the Wookiees, so it's definitely worth doing. To get over this big door in just 4 buttons, we'll need Grievous's Bodyguard to be a given character. Triple jump up top, and time your jump just right to get over the door. Nice. Lots of running and a few jumps later, you finally reach the tiny spaceship that's totally from the movie and can blast off to Dagobah or wherever. That's a decent 21 buttons for the level. It would be cool if the next level was Dagobah, but it's actually Secret Plans, the last Yoda-centric level for a while. Player 2 should be Yoda by default, freeing us up to pick Droideka. From the start, cycle through all the characters to get Yoda up against this wall, and when Droideka comes up, you'll pop right through. Make sure to hold toggle as you head over to the next area. Now this is one of the trickier parts of this run because if you do it wrong, it soft locks the game. Carefully walk through the door frame and walk into the next area. Time your action press button just right to get a short character to go through this panel. Then line up right here again to Yodika clip through this wall. Thankfully, you can upwarp in this spot to the upper level, continuing to hold toggle as you walk through the empty void to get through the wall back to the normal play area. You want to have selected either IG-88 or 4-LOM. Assuming the level gave you the right bounty hunter, you're now all set to finish the level in fairly standard fashion. Open up the droid panels, and in this room, let deflect bolts do its thing, which may take some time, but it will eventually happen. Once to the final area, swap to Yoda and you know what to do. Of course, make sure to hold toggle to get to R2 or your fancy bounty hunter to finish the level with just 12 buttons pressed. We've now finished that little Ewok/Yoda escapade and can get back to doing the levels in order, starting with Bounty Hunter Pursuit. What's nice about this level is you can hold down attack to shoot the entire time. That solves that problem, but what about the torpedoes? This isn't something I realized until doing this challenge, but you can actually hold down the action button too and fire torpedoes automatically. So that's why infinite torpedoes is needed. You churn through them purple boys real fast. So it's only 2 buttons for the level. But wait a minute, if you can hold down X and B through the level, including through the cutscenes, maybe you can hold them between levels too. And actually, yes you can. So that would mean we can hold X and B from the ending section of Secret Plans as we head to Bounty Hunter Pursuit, removing those 2 buttons. And then by playing the vehicle levels back to back, we can avoid pressing any more buttons for those levels. Though the tow cable ones are a bit different, so we'll skip those for now. We knock out Battle over Coruscant, Rebel Attack, and Falcon Flight with 0 buttons pressed. It might be smart to tape down those buttons or something because your fingers start to cramp a bit, and we wouldn't want that. Now we can get back where we left off with Kamino. What if I told you you could cross this gap with your super with just 1 button press? Seems impossible, right? Well... like many levels, our super is working hard for the money alongside deflect bolts. Later on, all these jumps can be done fairly easily using backflips, but not this one. We'll finally need to bust out the astromech. Getting to the Jango fight is easy stuff, and really so is the fight too. Just make use of those deflected bolts. Oddly though, Jango just kinda gives up for the last hit, so we unfortunately need to dispatch him ourselves. 16 buttons for one of the more straightforward levels of the run. Next is one of the 2 lava-based levels from the prequels that seems to always be tough for challenges. It's pretty easy going for the most part for a while, just 1 button needed until this part where the path splits. The higher level is the way to go as it requires less jumps. You can just barely walk across the giant crucible thing here, so no jumps needed. And then at the R2 panel, you can actually use it through the blocks. Next room is simple, just use the grapples. And then comes one of the hardest areas of the entire game. First off, make use of a deflected bolt here, then force this platform. Then you have to perform 2 near pixel-perfect backflips to get across the lava in only 2 jumps. Finishing out the level just follows standard play except a bounty hunter bomb here. And boom, only 23 buttons pressed. Well, that's actually the most out of the prequel levels. Was not expecting that. We skipped over Chapter 5 of Episode 1, so it's now time to head back to Naboo. Most of it is basic stuff. Your custom super does most of the heavy lifting. Thankfully, he can use short panels, cause that comes in handy twice. And of course, make use of those reflected explosive bolts. The best way to get up here is to make use of the sometimes given Grievous's bodyguard and its high jump. Hold toggle for these 2 jumps. Just keep toggling as you use this short panel, jump back over, then use this grapple after it's revealed with a deflected bolt. And we'll save having to jump 3 times through the rest of the level by holding toggle through the end. Droideka is always a given character for this level, and it lets us roll up stairs with ease. The final area is where things get rough. I was completely unable to get a deflection to free any of the guards, but eventually I got lucky with one. I think the others up top are impossible, so you do have to shoot twice to free them. For your last shot, make sure to hold the attack button down cause we'll need it for a future vehicle level. Wouldn't want to waste a perfectly good X-Press. Then finish toggling on R2 to end the level with 14 buttons pressed. Jedi battle is short and simple. Deflect bolts gets the job done alongside 3 forces since you have to save your friends, which is a bit of a bummer. With Jango, the last 2 hits are a bit tricky since he isn't shooting at you, but luckily there is a massive battle happening around you, so just make use of bolts from some other enemies. Good stuff. Since that was story mode, we can line it up with gunship cavalry to cut out a button press by hitting continue story. Still holding X from Theed Palace, we head to the absolute best level of the entire game. At least we only need 12 presses to get the bombs we need, so not too bad. Continue holding X as we head to the final vehicle level. With the previous vehicle levels, it was pretty obvious that story mode was the best, but with Hoth battle, it's not so clear. In the first area, just play through normally, one tow cable required. Then toggle over and use a funky quirk of the Imperial shuttle to fly over this barrier. It's actually surprisingly easy to pull off. Then we're back to the snowspeeder cause we need the tow cable for the final area. But how to get there? Well, there's a way to get around this barrier too, this time using spinning. It's a good trick. Then we finish the level the standard way, just 3 AT-AT kills requiring 6 tow cables. That puts the level at 9 presses. We're now 21 levels into the run and stand at 208 presses from gameplay and 79 in the menus. Now on to the level where you save the Chancellor. For such a long level, I was actually a bit surprised by the button count necessary. Choose your lightsaber super and head on to the Dooku fight. Getting there, it's mostly standard play except using the R2 panel to activate this lift, and then later using Grievous's bodyguard's high jump once again to make these jumps. For the boss fight, you want to use deflected bolts to take out Dooku. It's a bit tricky and you'll need some luck as there is a limited number of droids that attack. One thing though, in free play, Dooku and the droids won't attack you until you attack first. Heading down the tunnel area afterwards, there are some beams on the floor that seem short enough to just walk over, but you can't. Thankfully, there's a droideka that allows us to toggle our way over these beams, no jumps needed. And here, time a jump when you are a character that can jump to get over, finally ending your toggle spree as your super. Kill some droids like we've grown accustomed to, via suicide and betrayal, and one more force brings the level to just 16 presses.
Next.
Lava Simulator 3000. Select Yoda once again, but swap off right after because he moves a bit too slow. Use R2 to fly across 2 gaps, but then you'll need to swap off to get over the next 2.
Oh, that's hot.
Now Yoda can do his thing. Backflip triple jump over the door with ease. Still holding toggle, time a shot to take out the blocks, and toggle up to press the button. We can now pass this death barrier when a droid pops up in the cycle. At this point, I should mention it's required the Imperial/clone given for this level is a Force user. If not, player 2 will swap to Yoda. I'll explain why that's bad in a bit. Just 2 forces are needed to move forward, where we reach the stuff of nightmares. It took me way too many tries to map out the optimal path here. I'm still not fully sure I got it. It'll take 5 jumps, or flies, to reach the spire thing. Swap to a lightsaber character and backflip up. This part is quite tricky. You'll use 3 jumps here. The boss fight is kinda funny. To avoid pressing any buttons, you'll need to push your previous AI buddy into the lava. This is a rare part where invincibility is strictly required. And the reason player 2 can't be Yoda is because, well, just look at this. That's one jumpy little boy. He's just impossible to push into the lava. So, 22 buttons are needed for the level. For the 18 prequel levels, that's second only to Droid Factory. Told you those lava levels are tricky. With the prequels totally done, we now have some of the most complex levels ahead of us. But the next is not one of those. We already did Secret Plans, and we need to skip Tatooine for now. Heading to the Death Star, the first part is trivial with your super character who can open stormtrooper panels and jump this gap. Once in this strange bottomless pit room, you can triple jump here for some style points, or just grapple up like normal. Doesn't make a difference. Past this panel, just run along to the final area, build the levers, and free the princess. That's 18 buttons for honestly one of the more disappointing levels of this run. The entire thing is just standard play with a super. That brings us to Echo Base on Hoth, since we need to skip the next Death Star level for now. This is a mostly simple level, lots of building. In fact, this is the level with the highest proportion of building to other button presses, with 6 out of the 11 total being from building stuff. But besides that, deflect bolts helps a lot, and once in this room, there's quite a neat little trick to get up this ledge without jumping. Push a block to have its momentum take it across the ice, and quickly run in front of it to just barely get nudged up the ledge. Then later on, 2 bounty hunter bombs are needed here, since the bomb's range is just barely too small to reach all the blocks. Deflected bolts again does a lot of the work, but I will say it's quite tough getting them to take down the force field around the Falcon. You'll need some good RNG. Build the Falcon bits to round out the 11 presses. With that relatively straightforward level, we head to Dagobah, one of the most complex and button-dense levels of the game, tied for 3rd overall. We select a Ghost Yoda to start, and make sure Grievous is given, though he usually is. At the start, slowly walk over to the stairs, then backflip up top. Thankfully, we can swap to R2 at this point. He'll take us across the water, where we can do a couple flies over the bushes. Self-destruct would work too, but flying over is cooler. Here, swim out to around this spot, hold toggle to become Grievous, and quickly jump up onto the land. Only Grievous works here because for whatever reason he survives for a split second in the water, compared to other characters that die instantly. Then you can swap back to R2. He can swim his way all the way down to this wall, where self-destruct will come in handy. Now this part is one of the dumbest parts of this run cause I truly can't tell if it's all RNG based or precise movement is needed. Fly out into the abyss as R2, your co-op partner will jump across to reunite with you, but then you die. During this process, you'll just have to hope that he'll press the button to lower the platform so you can fly across. If all goes well, make your way towards the Vader boss fight with specific, though forgiving platforming. But wait, you can actually skip this boss fight. That's what Yoda is for. Move up here as R2 and swap to Ghost Yoda. With some precise movements, a backflip slam will clip you out of this area under the floor. From here, just casually stroll along and upwarp past the gate. Of course, when upwarping, you'll want to hold down toggle to cycle to R2 so that you can cross this bit of water. Once here, make sure your AI partner has jumped up and is switched to Ghost Yoda. Make your way forward and standard play your way to the end. I should note the bats here are why Ghost Yoda was needed. They interrupt building and using the Force. That brings Dagobah to a monstrous 27 buttons pressed, again tied for 3rd most in the game. If all went right at the end, player 2 should be Ghost Yoda, freeing up your selection of Droideka for the next level. You'll also need the game to give you a FET for this first area, where you can fly across and build the panel for R2. Quick correction here. I thought because of player 2 being Ghost Yoda, we would have to use self-destruct to open this door ourselves. But after nearly finishing this video, I realized an easy way to have player 2 be not dead Yoda. This of course lets us use a deflected bolt to open the door. To do this, basically we need to swap this level with Secret Plans, and then Kamino is moved ahead of Bounty Hunter Pursuit to give us the X and B presses needed for the vehicle levels. This lets us have Corporeal Yoda here for no additional button presses. After the door is opened, continue on as R2. And here comes the first Vader fight of 3. In total, Vader has 29 hearts in this level, so there better be some skips or this is gonna get rough. And thankfully there are. For this first fight, there's a somewhat tricky skip with R2. It requires precise movement that I won't get into, there are tutorials online, but once you get it, it's not a tough trick to reproduce. Swap to Vader for the next part, where you can force this platform under our feet to get up top. Now we need to hold toggle and press self-destruct when a droid pops up. This will cause a platform to lower, and we can cycle to Yoda. This is our ticket to skip the next Vader fight. Jump and hold toggle through Droideka. Continue toggling, and with a nicely timed jump away from the wall, you should upwarp to the next area right after the boss fight. As you can imagine, skipping that fight is pretty clutch. Settling on R2 now, fly over and hold toggle again. This will simultaneously shatter the window, but also let you push through the window too, which would normally require one jump. Once in the next area, still holding toggle, time your death so that you spawn as Yoda, giving you just enough time to double jump across. Sometimes this visual glitch happens, so oh well. Then swap back to R2 to finish the fight with 10 self-destructs. Might as well call him Ewok. You may be wondering why we didn't bring our Ewok friend along, as he saves more buttons than Yodika does, but sadly, for whatever reason, Mr. Ewok doesn't target Vader in this final area. He does in the other 2 fights, but not this one, the one where it actually would have helped. I'm sorry, little one. I don't know if we can be friends anymore. Ah, who am I kidding? You're alright. So this level needed 32 buttons, the second most of any level. Who'da thunk it? But the next Bespin level is nowhere near as taxing. It mostly follows standard play. Pull the lever, make Boba open this door, make your way here, and backflip across. Once at this gap, there's a trick you can do with R2 where you fly across and land on top of this railing. This lets you get over the blocks without jumping, as you swap to your super to open the door. At this point, you'll need to swap to Fett, who I believe is always a given character, and fly across, taking out all the troopers with their own shots. That means the level has only 14 presses, and we are done with episode 5. Next is Jabba's palace. At the start, there are 2 jumps to get these turrets to open up. For a while, I thought deflected bolts could not take these bad boys out, but after waiting around for literally 30 minutes, there stood before me was no longer a door, but instead a passageway to my dance with a Rancor. But before that, we had to use a lot of panels. So many panels. This level has the most of any level with 10. The next highest is only 5. Most of the level is pretty straightforward, but there is a pretty massive skip for this room. Do a backflip triple jump near the entrance to jump over the warp barrier to the previous room. This allows you to walk under the floor, bypassing a bunch of button presses. It's tricky to get the upwarp in the right spot since the camera won't move any closer, but with any luck you'll upwarp past this gate and be on your merry little way. Just make sure to jump over the abyss up ahead. Then up to Jabba's room, there's really nothing too crazy. Use a bomb to take out the guards, and here you can avoid jumping up by having a guard melee you up the little stair to use the panel. And then to finish out the level is the beautiful Rancor fight, which plays out pretty much the same as any normal playthrough, bringing the total for the level to 27, so tied with Dagobah. We now head to Sarlacc City for one of my favorite levels for this challenge. Making your way across the skiffs, use the levers as needed, but you only need to jump here to get to the upper section as you just walk across for the other skiffs. Once to Boba, let your deflected bolts take him out without much trouble. Here, swap to Fett, who you should be given every time, and fly off to the right. This way is slightly better than making that tricky jump across the normal way. 4 forces and 1 jump later, we've made it inside. Blow up these beams with a bomb, and backflip slam to the top level. Here comes the disco skip. Yes, there is a skip that doesn't require Yoda. First, push your AI partner into this corner, then build the speaker, making sure to run up and to the left. If you move the right way, the built speaker will push you through the wall where you can carefully backflip around the barrier to the next area. On top of the barge now, surprisingly only 1 more button is needed to use this 3PO panel. Everything else can be done with deflected bolts. That means the total for the level is only 22. For such a long level, that's not bad. It's now time to finish up episode 4. Here, there's a way to get a trooper to open the Imperial panel for you. First, force the stairs to get them to aggro you, and then run away. As long as a trooper was in front of the panel, he'll use it as he puts his blaster away when he's de-aggroed. Our exploding bolts come in handy once again. We move through the cantina, but not this cantina. Well, it's complicated. And then we grapple up with a jump, unfortunately being necessary over this tiny lip, and bomb the following door because the stormtroopers were unkind enough to not aggro us. Now we pass the movie-accurate movie theater and ride a dewback to get up top. For the Imperial spy supposed boss fight, deflected bolts come to the rescue once again, though this time it could take upwards of 15 minutes to get the luck you need to kill everything. So, only 6 levels or buttons for this next Only 6 buttons were needed for that long level. Let's head on back to the Death Star. This time we're just going to bring Yoda, not our super. We don't have to walk too far with Yoda this time, just jump up here. Now this next trick is one of the toughest to get right. It took me 13 attempts. After backflip triple jumping to clip through the door, which is the easy part, be very careful to stay under the floor. If you get too far to the side, which is very easy to do, you'll fall into the black abyss and be sent back to the trash compactor. Make sure to be the right distance below the floor. You can stop moving to fall a bit. The final part of the trick is the hardest, upwarping at the exact right moment to get to the next area. It has to be pretty much perfect or all that effort will be for nothing. Hold toggle from the upwarp to pick the player 2 character, which should be a sand trooper from Mos Eisley. Moving on from that madness, which skips at least 2 buttons, lots of lever pulls later, we come to another lever pull where you need to choose wisely. Only one is the optimal choice. Move along, make the elevator, and reach the bottomless chasm. In a sudden bout of cowardice, retreat back to this helmet dispenser until your fear subsides. Then you can cross the chasm. Now we reach the other Yoda skip. Because we picked the player 2 character, when we swap to Yoda, we can use the toggle delay to triple jump up, and have the continued automatic toggling save us 1 button press. Take a nice walk towards the door, and upwarp in the right spot to head to the final area. At this point, you should be Yoda. Finish the level with a simple jump into the death pit. You may be wondering if that was real, and it is. Remember when we went back to the helmet dispenser? That actually messed with the loading of the Falcon room, causing the level-ending warp to exist above the force field without the Falcon, or at least something like that. Just 22 buttons for the level, which I was quite satisfied by. We can now head to the Jundland Wastes with Yoda as player 2 after a swap in the cantina. 2 jumps are needed here, but none up here, just force the platform. A nice backflip will just get up here, bringing us to the Sandcrawler. There's quite a simple skip to get inside this thing. A backflip triple jump does the trick, swapping us to Yoda, who is needed for the next triple jump right ahead. This bypasses quite a lot of buttons, as you can imagine. Now that we're the Super again, the rest of the Sandcrawler part is trivial, and really so is everything up to the final area. Just backflip up here, which may be a little tricky. Once here, there are a few options that present themselves, but I think this is the best. First, build the land speeder and ride across. Call in player 2, who will magically warp to you. At this point, it should be R2. Controlling player 2, continue to press into the door of Obi-Wan's hut, while with player 1, keep pushing and turning the land speeder into R2. Even if you don't know the fastest method to warp R2 through the door, you should eventually do it through sheer luck. The level is beat in 26 buttons. And so we come to the final 3 levels, starting with Speeder Showdown. Story mode is fine for this one. Both players are dropped in from the start, so with player 2, use Luke to jump over the first area using the flowers, and then force the platform to get to the next area. Jump in the speeders, and instead of playing the level like a normie, head over to this corner to do arguably the most famous skip in this game. Using player 2 as a boost, line up perpendicular to this wall, turn around, and then press A to do a 360 flip. This should send you over the wall into the next area of the level. Now for the rest of the level, make sure you don't drop out player 2, as the AI is scripted to run back to the speeder section and won't pull any levers for you. This means once up top, after exposing and shooting the 4 spinning things, use both controllers to pull the levers, ending with 21 buttons pressed. But you'll want to hold down B from using the lever because it's needed a bit later. With both players dropped in, holding down B, we're ready to take on the climactic fight with Emperor Oh, he's dead. Yeah, if you don't know, you can just push him into the pit and kill him right off the bat. Like the prequel Vader fight, you'll need to have your lightsaber out to push him. So that's an X press, which you'll also want to hold down for the next level. The quick Emperor kill in story mode is a lot harder than free play, but it can be done. Put Luke into this corner so the Emperor will follow Vader to the bottom. With some precise movements, Palpatine will be gone for good, never to return at any point in the future for the rest of time. You may have noticed we skipped into the Death Star back when we ran through the vehicle levels. Well, with Jedi Destiny and Into the Death Star lined up in story mode, we save one button like we did with Jedi Battle and Gunship Cavalry. So the final level is a bit anticlimactic, but at least we don't have to drop out player 2. Now is the moment of truth. How many total button presses were needed to complete the game? Menus, excluding dropping in and out, accounted for 130 presses, much more than if we just played story mode. Now gameplay. The standard play free play run with the custom super and deflect bolts clocked in at 1,104. This possibly optimal run was just 473, a reduction of 57.2%, which is much more than the 46.2% reduction going from story mode to the free play run. 473 buttons means it took on average just a bit over 13 per level, which is not bad at all. It took 603 buttons with menus included. So there's the answer all that hard work was for, 603. That's well under the 700 goal I set out for. Nice work, everyone. Do I think this run is truly optimal? Most likely it's not. I was cutting off a button here, a couple more there, for a week before I finally said enough's enough and made myself stop so I could get a video about it out. If I continued, I'm sure another optimization or 3 would turn up. But even still, I could just be lacking knowledge of the game that would have helped me out in certain spots. I really just had speedruns to go by. They were really helpful for sure, and this minimal button playthrough would have been really lame without them, but at the end of the day, what's fast isn't always what takes the fewest buttons. With all that said, I specifically want to thank these speedrunners for their videos, which really helped out. Go check them out, as there's really some cool stuff in there that I didn't get to show in this run. Here are all the levels in chronological order. You can definitely tell episodes 1 and 2 are much shorter than the rest, and funnily enough they take the exact same number of buttons. Here's the list in ascending button order. I also put them in order by how much I personally liked them for this challenge. Just the level of enjoyment I got from optimizing them, but also executing the run. Like with Kashyyyk, it's a neat level, but that initial Yodica clip is super annoying, which bumps it down. One quick thing to note is with the newly discovered Falcon Skip, 3 more studs can be avoided in free play, but also there's a Yodica jump right here, along with a specific upwarp I wasn't able to pull off, that skips 2 more studs. So, only 23 studs must be touched to beat the game in free play mode, just in case you were curious. This video is long enough, so I think it's time to end